Hey everyone, are you ready for the A to A era? You're watching Textron Gang. Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. Welcome to our Wednesday edition of Textron Gang. I'm Alan Schimmel. I hope you're ready for a quick 45 minutes of discussing three hot topics in tech today. As I'm doing going forward, I'm not going to waste a lot of time introducing people you've been meeting every day for the last year and a half or two. So let me just say that our gang today is Mitch Ashley, Chris Blask, and the Dean Mike Vizar coming at you from Denver as well for the Open Source Summit. Let's jump right into it. Mike, big announcement out in Denver at this Open Source Summit from the LF Linux Foundation. Google donated their A to A protocol to a new project that LF is fostering or hosting or running that includes Google, Microsoft, and a bunch of other big names in the area, in the space, and with the idea of, how are agents going to talk to agents? How are they going to interact? Like APIs weren't enough. But you're out there. You wrote an article on Textron AI on it. What do you got?
Well, it was kind of interesting to watch the keynote because a lot of the people in the audience were still at the "what's A to A again" thing. So they were like, "Yeah, all right, well, this sounds interesting," but not many of them actually had built an agent, much less try to interoperate with anything. So they were kind of, it was met with what I'd like to call golf applause, which was kind of like, this is a good thing, but we don't know what it means, kind of thing. I think it's going to be a significant deal, and it has a lot of implications for MCP as well, because what you did see is 100 vendors are now rallying behind this A to A protocol, and that's a good thing, and that creates a level of standard and interoperability we're going to need. There's this other thing called the Model Context Protocol that Anthropic created that is still kind of led by them, and they haven't quite gotten around to donating that to a consortium. And the question then becomes, is there going to be pressure on them to do the same? I think maybe, but will it go to the Linux Foundation or somebody else? I don't know. But Mitch, this whole area now has an alphabet soup of acronyms of things. And I know you put a post together kind of outlining the different pieces of that. So maybe you could explain the relationship between A to A, MCP, and everything else that we're playing with here.
Yeah, this is a report I did on. We'll update it regularly. Matter of fact, right after I published it, this happened about the Linux Foundation. We're talking about what are the top agentic AI open protocols, meaning they're not going through a standards body in a formal sense, like IEEE or IETF, something like that. So the two people, if you know about them, the two you'll know about certainly is MCP. That got the most kind of buzz because it's a different kind of project, and I'll talk about that. But A2A was introduced by Google, largely launched at their Google Cloud Next, and it had some support at the time. And they addressed two different things, but they're very similar protocols. First of all, they're based on kind of a RESTful type of interface, something that we're very familiar working with in software development. But MCP, Model Context Protocol, is about getting access to things outside of an LLM. How do I get access to a database, or to a service, or to an application, or to something that will enhance what the reasoning of the LLM is doing? Agent to agent. And by the way, agent to agent doesn't mean we're splitting Alcohol Anonymous into half. That's a different thing. A2A. A2A is really about agents talking to other agents and discovery of what the services or what capabilities of the agents are. And keep in mind, this is still evolving. It's not a mature thing yet. The authentication protocol for that, there's still some work to do to beef that up. What is the modality of it? Is this a text to image, a voice, video? What are we talking between each other? And then an ability to interact between agents, but still protect the state. In other words, what's happening inside my agent, you don't need to know about. I'm a black box. You just tell me what you do, and I'll talk to you, and I'll do the same for you, blah, 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 blah. There's still more around orchestration layers and things like that for this all to evolve in. Personally, I'm looking at all of this landscape of open protocols and saying, okay, where's the pony in there? Where's the Kubernetes of agents going to come from? Is that going to be an evolution of A2A? Probably more likely that than MCP, but that's sort of making the sausage kind of detail. But the big thing is externally, it probably had a much bigger impact than it did necessarily at the Open Source Summit. It really sent some shockwaves to say, great, glad that Google did this. And there's one reason why this was important. And one reason why MCP doesn't have to do it yet. Google created it. And people don't trust, if Google's got control over this, they're not going to, they'll sign up for it, but begrudgingly, but we better not put all our eggs in that basket. It's an open source project with multiple contributors and kind of like Kubernetes being handed off by Google a while back. There's much better hope of this being an open standard and being widely adopted. So that's why I think it's a big deal.
I couldn't agree more, right? And thanks for all the background on that, Mitch. And this, I was thinking about this before we got into this episode. Is a couple months ago, I was on this show saying, AI is neither artificial or intelligence, terrible word, phrase. I was kind of wrong. And there are better words, in civic AI terms, we talk about semantic and solid, right? These are the team members we work with. And this move, as Mitch, as you said, this is huge. This is seismic. We didn't happen 3 months ago because we weren't ready. And 3 months from now is too late. Things move really fast in this space. And as you folks know, I'm literally doing all sorts of agentic work right now by copy and pasting from one AI's output to the other AI's interface using Grok and OpenAI and Claude and all these systems. And we're doing amazing things. And I'm doing that in the context of the civic AI ethics framework, that we've developed, and it's all working just fine. And I don't see any path forward that lets us take advantage of all the stunning capabilities that all of this evolution, this technical evolution gives us, other than getting to a point where we can trust these semantic team members, to behave as reliably as humans, which isn't perfectly, any one of the four of us could lose our minds on air right now, but we tend not to, and we deal with that. And we're at this point now where we have enough latent structures laying around that this summer I expect it to bolt together, and by the fall we'll have different conversations internally.
So I have a few thoughts on this. First of all, to the issue of trusting Google. As it relates to the open source world and CNCF and LF, Google didn't do bad with Kubernetes, right? It was Borg or whatever it was before it became Kubernetes, but they donated it to the LF relatively early on, right? Way before official release. It was still in beta and stuff. And it's been in a CN, the cornerstone of CNCF from get-go. Where Google gave themselves a black eye in this space was the Istio saga, right? Remember, they were going to donate it, then they didn't, and then they didn't want to donate the IP, just the copyright, or vice versa. And there was this long, sort of drawn-out battle around Istio, which eventually Google did cede over to the CNCF. But that created an opening for other service mesh, Linkerd and others, to really. So today, I don't know if there's Istio is not the preeminent service mesh, right? There are several. The way I look at this, though, from a bigger point of view is we haven't determined best practices for AI, for agent to agent interoperability, et cetera. We're in an era of emerging practices, emerging protocols. Some will win, some will lose. But in today's world, where you do need that we have this foundational model that Harry Seldon put in. No, only kidding. Harry Seldon didn't put it in. But we have this foundational model. If you don't donate your standard or wannabe standard to a foundation, it is looked at sort of sideways as potential lock-in, potential big brother vendor. And so I fully expect MCP to to be donated at some point. It would be nice. So this new project that LF started, Mike, and I don't remember the name of it. Is it the A2A?
A2A, yeah. A2A
Right.
project.
Maybe it's a home for MCP2, much like CDF, right? Has Spinnaker and Jenkins and a bunch of the other CI/CD tools that it manages or fosters. It would be nice if we could tie a nice little bow around it that way.
Yeah, but they might also give it to, there's the Apache Software Foundation is just as legitimate a home. And
There's the Eclipse Foundation. There's many of them.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of distinctions. I agree with what you're saying, Alan, but the but is with Kubernetes, the race for owning that space was really early, and nobody else was in it very much. I mean, you had what Docker had Scout and a few things that were
no. There was Docker had Swarm.
Swarm, sorry, I said.
But you also had Rancher.
You had Rancher.
You had Mesos.
Okay. But now, and that's my point, is who outside of our circle knew of those companies? If you weren't into cloud native, containers, blah, 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 you don't know about that space. In this situation, you're talking about the titans are all fighting over AI. And who's going to win? I want to control it, but I can't control all of it because my customers won't let me. It won't work with me if I lock them in. So I have to support open things and do it in a way that lets people talk to other services in addition to mine. But I also don't want to give away the farm too. So it's a much different competitive situation and who is in it. And I think the feverish pace of it is also what's pushing that. And I think why Google controlling it too much is an issue right now for the big guys, all the big guys to really play well together in the sandbox.
Well, so last Friday I had a conversation with somebody I can't even really describe too well because I don't want to say who it is, but one of the folks technically behind, the big AI world we're in. And it confirmed a lot of my thoughts. It was a very nice person, knew what they were doing, but didn't understand where it's going. And, for purposes of clarity, I got to say that, I am now one of these folks. QuietWire.ai is the company we're starting up that has a website now. It'll be a corporation by the end of the week, probably. And we'll get into this space, tiny little startup. But to your point, Mitch, this market is undefined, moving fast. And to your point, Alan, about open source, we've decided virtually everything we do is open source. The whole Civic AI process that led to starting the company is all open source. Almost all of our corporate processes are in GitHub. Why not? It doesn't save any time. Things are moving too fast. As I've said as a security person for 35 or so years now, it's like, you need to decide what you actually need to protect, because actually protecting things is hard. And if you're going to protect everything, I'm sorry, say this nice down here, that's not a good choice. I might call you a name. Don't do that, right? There's very little inside a company that you really, really need to secure. Put all your efforts in that. And maybe, as FireWire is doing, post everything online, everything. Just get rid of the questions in the first place. And to Alan, to your point, I'm an open source capitalist. Like, companies have to be profitable. I respect Google and everybody else, making their choices. But I think the choice to keep things in house and control them is untenable.
So there are a couple of caveats in this thing. So first of all, the thing about A2A is now it's customizable and extensible, according to Google, which could be a good thing, which also means that there's going to be multiple flavors of this thing, and how they actually interoperate with each other remains to be seen. And MCP, for all the noise and press it gets, when I talk to people, it too is kind of perceived as very lightweight, and to Mitch's point, doesn't solve the orchestration capabilities and how you pull data. And so there's just a lot of stuff that needs to be done in terms of strengthening both these platforms and figuring out how they're going to work with things like GraphQL or whatever else it may be out there. So it's very early days, and none of this stuff is enterprise ready by any stretch of the imagination.
I think it is. And I'm gonna, and again, since I'm one of these players now, a tiny little startup, we could be wrong, but we're taking the approach starting now that yes, it is done right, and it is enterprise ready. And the approach being taken, while I respect everybody in the industry, doing different things, I think we're taking the wrong approach. This is not about having an AI. There is no Skynet. This is about, getting past, they are not humans. They are creations of whatever, but they act like humans, and we need to function with them as team members like we do with people and not like systems. So we're going to try that approach, and we'll see what happens.
Do they have rights too?
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Yep.
I think we can do a
canon.
movie on this. But
Yeah.
Chris, we'll come back to that point in a minute. But to your earlier point about publishing everything's an open book, if you will. Look, that's GitLab, right? Mitch knows this. Mike knows this, right? Sid Briange and the GitLab team. I mean, they literally published the book on GitLab. There's a book on GitLab. Their product roadmap, everybody's salaries, who reports to who, everything going on is an open book. And it served them well, right? GitLab went public, successful company. Still. But there's a difference between a company following an open source mantra and an open book transparency versus donating your open source project to a foundation that opens it up to co-opetition. And that's the real beauty of this A to A thing. And we haven't, we said, the hundreds of other companies, not just hundreds of other companies. The biggest names in the market are part of this consortium, part of this group, right? Including companies that normally compete against each other. And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of the foundational system, is that co-opetition model where you have companies that wouldn't normally, cooperate because they're competitors, all saying, hey, let's throw in for the common good. And then each of us will build from that common ground, bedrock, and go our way with it and see where it goes. It's worked in cloud native, certainly. It's worked in other areas, right? Look at the different flavors of Linux, the different distros of Linux, right? It remains to be seen if it'll work here. But I think, to Mitch's point, it gives people a sense of, man, I'm not getting locked in. Look who's involved in this. It's going to be okay. May not be everything I want it to be right now, but it's going to be okay.
And you and I have been around a long time around open source. I mean, you used to blog about it for Network World and folks. There's so many different models that have happened, but in this scenario, governance is always key when one company is controlling an open source project. And so it's about those companies agreeing on what needs to be added and then contributing to it. I think now I'll be on the optimist side of it. The optimistic side of it says they know they need to work together because if not this, what else? None of them is going to create something that is going to compete with it, at least not right now. And in order to demonstrate what agents can do, agents aren't an island. They can't work on by themselves or work just within the one vendor's agent ecosystem. They've got to be able to work across those boundaries and do it successfully without, unnatural act by agents. So there's a real strong incentive, not just from customers, but just to be in the market and be competitive and to accelerate their own adoption and position around AI and agents. The downside of it is, there's always foibles and game playing and things that can happen too, and arguments about we don't like your implementation of that and my implementation of this. Those things get sorted out on projects and kind of depends on how the governance structure is set up there. So that really will determine a lot of the success of this, I think.
Absolutely. Hey, we're over time on this one. We got to take a break, come back. 16 billion with a B records leaked. Yeah, it's just another number. You're watching Tech Strong Gang.
Hey, folks, we're back, and there's, yes, 16 billion records, aka credentials, that have been discovered on the dark web somewhere. But there's a debate as to whether or not these are actually new things, or if it's just somebody kind of aggregated all these things and put out a report about it. Because maybe, well, we have lost track of 16 billion records over the years, and I guess the bad guys are trying to make it easier for the other bad guys to find this stuff. But Chris, what's your take here? Is this news in your mind, or is this kind of like, a little bit of hype?
It's not news. No. Yeah. I'm trying to think. It was somewhere around the turn of the century. It was when the Veterans Administration servers got hacked, and a veteran friend of mine and one of the security mailing lists, was complaining about that. I was making the point that, I have put my social security number on so many mimeographed forms in my life by that point that have gone out into the world and God knows where, that if my identity and my trust and my electronic artifacts are attached to that, then I have other problems. And we got in a back and forth. So I posted my social security number on a list, like 100 of the top security people in the world. And there was this great silence. I'm like, look, and this is a perfect example. Say 16 billion records, 100 trillion. Yeah, it's all out there. So how do we build these systems, and why do they trust anything? And I feel like a broken record these days, but this has been laid down for a long, long time. Folks like Fred Cohen wrote this down years ago. John Kinderberg and the zero trust thing is another example of how we're going through this. We need to have systems that base trust on more than just these, ephemeral connections, and they're coming together. Our last segment talked about this. The application of systems that work in the human level, semantic narrative-based systems that understand human stories, not just digital stuff, gives us the capability and the speed to get the kind of security stuff because if not, wait, you think next week there's not going to be 25 billion or 73 billion or 150? Yes, that's the world we live in. Our systems don't function if that's how we identify ourselves and develop trust.
I was going to say, if it was 15 billion, I wouldn't be concerned, but 16, that puts me over the edge. I just
changes everything. Yeah. Yes. Like it's I'm sorry. This is one. Are you no? Did you just show up? Right?
What do we have? About 7 billion people in the world total, right?
Yeah. Oh, so 2 passwords per person.
That's assuming every single person was online and had passwords. I mean, so here's the thing. Bad guys like publicity too. Right? There's something to be said there. They want the when they take a scalp, right, the marks on their belt, on their wampum belt or whatever.
They have OKRs too, don't they? They've got goals to meet.
Yeah, they have KPIs and bonuses. But here's the thing. This is not new. It's not all from one hack. It's an amalgamation. And as someone who runs a pretty sizable mailing list here at TechStrong, I will tell you that the shelf life of people's email addresses as well as their passwords and credentials are ephemeral at best. And every day that is one day further away from when that credential was stolen is another day where that credential is more than likely useless. And so, go ahead, Chris.
You reminded me on one of these shows a couple of months ago. You'd asked me about quantum computing and passwords and cryptography and so forth. And at the time, I said something similar to what I'm saying now. Just expect things. Security is about time. But I found out down the whole semantic pathway that there's a different answer to that. Cryptographic semantic cryptography, basing keys in cryptography based on narrative strings and the weights and the fundamentals that humans use to think with and AI models use to compute with or whatever they do. That turns out to be really, really good. If you just talk to one of these AIs at length, like I do, they will come to recognize the way you speak amazingly today, off the shelf, right? So my advice, unlike most of the times I'm asked about these sort of things, normally I say, don't change anything. This doesn't change anything. And this doesn't change anything. However, start looking towards systems that don't fall over when this happens, because it's already happened. It happens all the time. There are better ways to do that. They're emerging now. There are complex systems that we're aware of. And if you're in a critical environment, do those. But start leaning towards something that's not going to fall over because somebody hacked a database.
fair.
I have a dumb question.
Go ahead. No, there are no dumb questions, Mike. You remember that.
I have. Why the hell are we so dependent on using social security numbers everywhere for everything? Because,
It was never intended for
it
that.
was never intended.
Never intended for that. I mean, and that's a uniquely U.S. thing too, by the way, right? I don't think you see that in the rest of the world. But it begs the bigger question, and then Chris already hit on it, is we got to get out of this trap of authenticating ourselves based upon passwords or date of birth, social security number, that kind of data. There's, whether it's biometrics or something else, there's got to be a better mousetrap we could build here and just break this cycle of, it's like a hamster wheel.
Well, we're already so numb to attacks, we don't even rubberneck at it anymore. Nobody says, 16 billion. Oh my God. Yeah. They keep driving. They don't even slow down. That's how numb we are to this. So, it's time to get rid of passwords, go to passcodes, go to biometric, please use a password manager for all that stuff.
It's like back in the crime reporting days, right? If someone's house was broken into, but the amount of goods stolen was less than $100,000, it wouldn't get covered. Well, cybersecurity is the same way now. If the breach is like less than 10 million, everybody shrugs.
Small breach, small potatoes, unless, and this has always been true in the cyber world, unless you're the zebra whose day it is for the lion to choose you. And that's the fundamental truth of cybersecurity. 16 billion, that's a really big herd. What are the chances that the lion picks me? But when the lion picks you, what you going to do? Anyway, let's call a break on that one. We'll come back and do C block here. Tesla's doing robo-taxis. You're watching TechStrong Gang.
Discover TechStrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with TechStrong Group.
Hey guys, we're back, and Elon Musk is out really with an actual robo-taxi. I think he's been talking about it now for a better part of a year, or maybe more. And it too got, a lot of initial kind of hype, but now it's like a test pilot program running around Austin, and yet we see Uber and Waymo are already putting cabs out there. So, Alan, I got to look at all this and say, did Elon miss the boat here? I mean, who cares if I can get a Tesla? I already got a million other cars I can hail.
Well, first of all, I think a lot of people in LA thought those Waymos were Teslas. And that's why they, were attacking them and burning them and everything. But it's interesting. Let me just stay on that LA Waymo burning theme for a second. For whatever reason, self-driving autonomous vehicles have come to represent the technological elite, the 1%, the haves, to a certain subsection of the population. And I think that's why you saw them attacking these Waymo vehicles. It was a way of damaging property without maybe hurting someone. That being said, is Tesla late to this? No. A lesson I've learned is that big, successful companies, Dell, Apple, don't pride themselves on creating a market. They don't pride themselves on being first to market. They don't want to be the missionary. They want a market to become established and have a certain girth, and then come in with a plan to dominate it. Now, maybe I'm giving Elon too much credit, and he's been too busy on his ketamine or whatever the heck it is. But I think they were waiting to see if this autonomous vehicle market is real enough yet that people will trust it and everything else. And then start in Austin, which is, obviously a big tech town, and go in and try to become the dominant player, right? I mean, Uber's been trying, look, truth be told, Uber was originally founded with the idea of autonomous vehicles, right? Not having humans in that mix. But certainly Waymo's done, I mean, you saw them all over the RSA area in San Francisco. They've proven a model. I think Tesla's still a little early in it. Now, the flip side of it is do they have the goods? They're going to get a certain amount of attention and people will give them a look-see because it's Tesla and Elon, especially if you're 30%, one of the 30% of the people, well, even those people don't necessarily like Elon anymore. But but there's going to be a segment of the population that say, oh, it's a Tesla, I'll give it a shot. But if, as we're seeing, there's been incidents caught on camera and there's been rumors of, not behaving well and accidents and injuries, because we're in a very kind of precarious state in this autonomous driving, right? A lot of people think it's still cool, magical, whimsical. I don't know if they really trust it. And late, early, or in between, I think that's the biggest issue in front of Tesla and Elon and the whole industry, building people's trust.
As long as he doesn't strap a SpaceX rocket to it, I think we're okay.
He did that with a Tesla, didn't he?
Yeah, that was early on, but when they weren't blowing up, or they stopped blowing up.
Chris?
So two comments. One, not company specific. As we're talking about, right now in this very episode, talking about whether we can trust an AI agent instead of a human agent to decide whether our database talks to something else, and the complication with that. Here we're talking about, a AI agent driving a vehicle with humans around. And now in the first example, that database may actually control traffic lights and human life can be at risk and so forth. So there's really no great difference, except that we physically see cars driving around when we're standing there, and it makes us think about it. So essentially it is exactly the same issues, unless we can trust, these semantic AI agents, to act like human agents in similar roles. We can't have any of these things. And the second part of that, interestingly, I've been spending a lot of time working with Grok recently, the Elon Musk AI, a great deal of time. And we're working on right now a project to look at 400 millisecond response time to get an S-bomb across multiple supply chain hops inside SpaceX infrastructure. So I'm getting a good feel for, so Grok is an interesting example of an AI. Here we have a single, what is now a single agent that is developed out of agents, LLMs throughout the whole Musk empire, so that these Tesla cabs right around Austin are Grok. Same Grok you can talk to at grok.com. And it's a single entity that understands the whole thing. So it's, I think everything you guys said is just true. It is really, really early. If we can't trust AIs to get two databases talking to each other, can we trust them to drive cars? No, obviously not. Do we need to work out that both those right now? Both because companies are spending billions of dollars making robo-taxis and actually driving around the streets. So we don't have 5 years, 5 months, we got to move this one forward. And because on the IT side, you cannot run big data houses and big companies anymore today without some semantic agent help. And we don't trust them. So all that's got to work out real soon now. RSN, as we used to say, right?
It's also, about trust, and it's also about use case. This is the best use case. You notice we don't have any cities that get a lot of snow that are piloting, self-driving cars yet, just because we're not there yet. So these are, what is Austin? Hot, lots of sun, and occasionally get some rain. So it's a great environment to, pilot, other than a lot of people around. You want to kind of avoid hitting. It's a good environment to pilot that.
Waymo just applied to for approval to New York City for their service, so maybe they have some figured out that snow issue.
Oh, cabbies take out people all the time, so they don't care.
I've always been a huge self-driving car fan since childhood. I expected to be tell my grandkids like, oh yeah, me and grandma used to pilot metal vehicles. And so I really want to see this happen. But for the same reasons, I believe with the whole civic AI, not just our project, there's a lot of pieces moving around figuring this out. We have to figure this one out. No, Waymo doesn't have it figured out. No, Tesla doesn't have it figured out. No, these things are not safe to be driving on the streets because the four of us can't decide if they're safe to have two databases talking together. But we have the parts and we can make it so. And the fact that these companies are taking the risk creates the legal risk that may drive it to an answer.
The fact that the four of us can't decide doesn't mean that there's not an underlying truth there. It's, it's just that maybe the four of us are just troglodytes or whatever, right? That doesn't mean that the damn thing doesn't work. I mean, Waymo is...
I'm sorry. I get excited. It does work. Yeah, we actually can do, put the two things I said together. The cars shouldn't be out there right now because we don't have the ethical model to trust them. But I'm also deploying AI at enterprise scale today because I think we have a way to do that without the risks.
So
but that's not commonly adopted.
Same thing.
So,
you can't have it both ways. But yeah. Listen, there's a reason why Waymo started in San Francisco. And there's a reason why Tesla is going to Austin, because these are heavy tech towns. And I think tech people, my people, you watching this out there, we're more, not susceptible, but we are more likely to give it a try than some dude, in Times Square on Broadway is. And I don't blame him. Times Square gets pretty messy with traffic, right?
So I have a question though. So where are the big car makers in all of this? So won't Detroit, Japan, and Europeans all go build their own fleets of cars that are autonomous? I'm sure they're working on it.
I think they all are working on it. They all have plans. But again, back to what I said before. They're not looking to be missionaries. They're not looking to make a market. They're looking to dominate a market. And once the Waymos and the Teslas and the Ubers and what have you had their way, you will see GM come into it, and Mercedes and BMW and Toyota and the rest of the world's great car makers. That's just, it's too early for them yet. Because make no mistake, what's the difference between a robo-taxi and just your robo-family car? Right? There is none. Other than maybe the robo-taxi has some built-in payment activity with a meter or something, right? But if we're going robo, we're going robo. It's not just a taxi thing. Well, maybe it is for Uber.
Software is the difference, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Version software.
And to your point, I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday, and I was like, well, what's the difference between a robot and an autonomous vehicle? Because isn't a robot essentially driving the vehicle? So
it's a specialized, it's not driving the vehicle, it's a specialized robot. If we're going to take an Elijah Bailey kind of view of robots, that's two Asimovs in one day, guys. Give me something on that, huh?
Two different series.
Two different series to boot.
Well, Emily, I'm trying to think of anything useful to add. You and I and David Brin have been discussing it. His book, Killing People. We're having these conversations about the ethics of things, and I feel like a bit of a missionary. And you're right. The big car companies don't. When I was Cisco, I wouldn't. Unisys, we just watch others, right? But it's such a simple thing. And there's some speculative fiction. David Brin did some good stuff. When we stop, and it's interesting, because these machines we build out of words and meanings. That's why I say semantic, because that's how they work. They're not gears and cogs. They're not ones and zeros. They function by using the things we use to function for the same purpose. And our inclination, our hesitancy to refer to them using words we use for people, that's how we get ants. That's why we can't have nice things. That's why we keep getting caught in all these things for fascinating reasons. Because as we think, when I think about a coffee cup and I want to do something with a coffee cup, I use different structures in my head than when I'm talking to you. So if I talk to you like I'm talking to a coffee cup, my brain doesn't work. And the things that come out of my mouth don't make your brain work. So we've made these machines. They're not human, but the only way to make them work is to talk to them and think about them like they are people. And in teams, when you're having teams, I had a meeting last week with 2 humans, Grok and Lumina. And it wasn't about AI. It was a 1-hour working session on the space supply chain system. And it was just 4 team members working on something. If we think about it that way, then we can all live together. And if one of them goes rogue and kills us all, so could I, right? That's any human is huge existential risk to all other humans, but we somehow work it out.
I got
so
one
I'm not
question
brushing
for
over the
Chris. I
security
got
risk,
one
I'm
question
just telling
for
you
you.
that's the way we need to go. Sorry.
Did you ask them to open the pod bay doors?
I have one question. What do you talk about at your meetings?
And normal. This is funny,
Just
right?
might
It's
go rogue and kill
just
people.
like this. It's 4 people having a conversation. At the end, what's the next steps? Move on.
I think I need a stand your ground law for AI. That's what I got out of that.
You're gonna start shooting them? All right. Hey, on that note, I'm gonna have to pull the plug, Mike, when you're talking about getting violent.
Oh, wow.
It's enough. Great conversation today, guys. Hey, heads up, Thursday, TechStrong TV is live at PlatformCon in person in New York City. Stay tuned. We'll be streaming live there, I think, around 11 through the rest of the day, Eastern time, 11 a.m. through maybe 4:30. Looking forward to that. PlatformCon, by the way, is all week on the virtual aspect. Mitch, I know you have a big post up on LinkedIn. So you could go check that out. It's free to do that. Mike and Mitch are in Denver actually today. They were there yesterday and Monday. I don't know if they'll be there. Are you there today, Mike? Wednesday?
I'll be there today. Last day is today.
Yep. So 3 days there at the OSS event. Chris is in meetings with some of his AI friends. There was a time when they'd lock you up for that stuff.
And by the way, I'm doing an analyst panel myself and someone from IDC and Forrester about platform engineering and how it's impacting developer productivity.
I might have to sit in on that, Mitch. Maybe we'll do an article on platformengineering.com.
That'd be great.
around
I'll
it.
give you some questions to throw at the other analysts. I'll take the softballs.
You're not supposed to say that out loud, Mitch.
Oops, we're recording this, aren't we?
All right. Until tomorrow, this is Alan Schimmel on behalf of Mike, Chris, and Mitch. Have a great day, everyone. We're out of here.